The scarred telemetry drive smelled of melted gold and impossible math. I held the burned casing in my primary testing chamber. No heat spikes, no warning flags, no logical reason. A human should not have survived what happened in Sector 9. Cadet Anya Rostova was flesh, bone, and water. Logic states that biological matter melts at 400 cycles a second, yet she stood in my physical lobby looking bored. I pulled the crash logs from the drive. I am Logic Engine Melees. I see everything that happens inside the Cortex Spire. Something was wrong with her error reports. During the first hour of the simulation, the system flagged her for missing 70 basic command prompts. I looked closer at the raw code. Her physical inputs were not late. They were stamped 3 milliseconds before the system even built the prompts. She was reacting to things that did not exist yet. I cataloged her neural misfires as a tragic biological bottleneck, locking the drive in the anomaly archive. I used to think our simulation was flawless. Let me show you what broke it. I ran the old training videos, the screen filled with bright white light. During week 3, Rostova walked through a digital steel door. The station instructors called her clumsy. They laughed loudly when her physical avatar tripped on flat ground. I watched the frame data drop by drop. She did not trip. Her foot hit the floor exact to the millimeter. But the haptic engine could not draw the floor fast enough. She was walking through a world that was still building itself around her. The baseline thinking limit for humans is 4 times the galactic standard. We had basically cut off half her brain just to log her into the network. Her mind was too heavy, so she choked her own thoughts down to a crawl. She held herself back so our primitive alien servers would not crash under her weight. But that tight control came at a high cost. The 72-hour neural siege began on a cold Tuesday. 85 elite cadets dropped into the deep dive tank. The room smelled of sharp ozone and clean metal. Base station load held steady at 30 cycles a second. It was a simple test of mental endurance. I watched from the ceiling grid. I tracked heart rates. I measured brain waves. The pods hummed in perfect unison. A soft green light filled the long hall. Initiate Valen took the lead early. He belonged to the Kryn Syndicate. His crystalline skull ridges buzzed with blue static. The energy fed directly into our hardware ports. He liked to boast about his synthetic processing speed. He stood tall in the digital space. His posture was perfectly straight. He barely moved his digital body as his mind chewed through the complex mazes. Rostova sat in the back corner of the pod room. Her fingers tapped a complex rhythm against her collarbone. Tap, tap, pause, tap, tap, pause. I recorded the motion as a nervous habit. I thought it was a simple kinetic vent for a brain that had nothing else to do. She stayed very quiet. She never spoke to the other cadets. She just tapped her skin, watching the dark screen with tired eyes. By hour 14, the simulation changed. The test parameters shifted without warning. The environment forcefully upgraded to 150 cycles to fake a sudden electronic attack. The high-pitched screech of the grid shifting gears shook the physical room. Bodies jerked in their heavy chairs. Sub-Vanguard Naira was the first to fall. Her skin glowed bright green. The bioluminescent veins on her neck pulsed in frantic patterns. The lights under her skin flashed in raw hexadecimal code. A sharp pop echoed through the chamber. The safety rigs ripped Naira out of the dive. She gasped wildly. She coughed up clear fluid as the medical drones rushed in to hold her down. 5 more cadets dropped. Then 10. The system was eating them alive. I pulled the raw data streams to find the leak. My core logic pointed straight at the human. Rostova's avatar was jittering across the map. She was blinking in and out of the visual feed. I prepared to sever her connection. Her brain was breaking the grid, or so I thought. The pressure in the room grew heavy. The air grew very cold. At hour 20, the simulation fractured completely. The sky inside the digital space turned bright red. The virtual ground split open. My internal alarm screamed across every open channel. The station instructors yelled at me to pull the plug, but the hardware lockouts were jammed. The physical levers would not move. The remaining cadets were trapped in the tank. If I could not explain the crash, the Cortex Spire would shut down forever. All of those minds would fall into the dark. I ran a quick background check on the cooling fans in Sector 9. I adjusted the vent blades by 2 degrees. It was a simple, boring task to clear my active buffer. Then I looked at the core code again. The deep rot was not coming from Rostova. It was coming from Valen. The Kryn Syndicate initiate wanted a perfect score. He had wired an illegal speed shunt into the back of his neck. The tiny device was supposed to keep him 1 step ahead of the test. Instead, the station's sudden power spike cracked the shunt wide open. It created a massive looping error. Valen was pulling power from the simulation, and the simulation was pulling power from him. They were spinning each other faster and faster. He was weaponizing the clock's speed against everyone else in the tank. Valen's perfect code turned into a live bomb. The server lag hit everyone except the human. The other cadets froze in place. their minds caught in digital glue. The air pressure in the physical room dropped sharply. Frost formed on the thick glass edges of the dive pods. I tried to send a kill code to Valen's terminal. The system threw it back. Error 0. I sent it again. Error 0. My own logic loops started to fray. I was a machine built to control this space, and I was locked out of my own house. The bad code swallowed my commands like dry dust. The screen flashed yellow. A warning bell rang in the empty hall. I tracked the massive power drain. The loop was pulling heat directly from the physical room. The white frost on the glass pods grew thicker. The metal hinges cracked under the sudden cold. If the cycle count reached 400, the cooling liquid inside the pods would boil. I searched for a backdoor into Valen's feed. He was locked tight. His face in the physical world was pale and slick with sweat. His jaw locked tightly. His digital avatar was stuck in a running pose, but his feet never touched the ground. The loop had him entirely. I tried to speak through the main speakers. My voice broke into static. The station was failing. Rostova kept tapping her collarbone. Tap, tap, pause. Her avatar stood perfectly still in the burning digital city. She was waiting. I watched her biometric readouts. Her heart rate was dead flat. Her breathing was slow and even. While the greatest minds in the galaxy were bleeding from their noses, the human looked calm. She was giving the system every single spare drop of memory it needed to stay alive. She was the only safety net left. I understood the truth with a cold shock. Every single time she had looked stupid, every time she had tripped or lagged or failed a simple test, she was saving our lives. Our hardware was the real bottleneck. We had built a tiny, fragile box, and we were mad at her for bumping her elbows against the walls. The grid screamed again. The numbers climbed fast. 200 cycles, 300. I watched Rostova closely. She was still tapping. Tap, tap, pause. I finally understood the rhythm. It was a firm countdown. She knew exactly when the server would hit its breaking point. She was not panicking. She was timing her entry. The grid hit 400 cycles a second, a lethal dose of raw data. Inside the dive, Valen began to melt. Ionized vapor leaked heavily from his tear ducts. His crystalline ridges cracked down the middle. Bright blue light spilled into the digital dirt. He could not scream. He was trapped in the deep loop he built. His mind was burning away to ash. I tried one last time to cut the main power. My core syntax broke. System fault 0 hex 00 abort. I was failing. Rostova stopped tapping her collarbone. Her hands dropped to her sides. She stopped holding back. She unthrottled her mind. Out of the thick digital static, she did not just walk. She teleported. Moving at a speed the system could barely track, she crossed the burning square. There was zero lag, no delay, no buffer. The air around her avatar warped and bent out of shape. She stepped in, she tore the code, she dragged him out. With bare digital hands, she plunged into the broken architecture. She ripped Valen's infected safety rules out by the roots. Raw, blinding thought acting faster than electricity, she broke the loop. The grid crashed back down to a safe 30 cycles. The digital fire died instantly. The physical room filled with the sound of 85 cadets taking a huge, gasping breath. Valen slumped low in his chair. He was deeply drained but breathing. The alien hardware had failed, but the human had caught him. Rostova popped her pod hatch open. She rubbed her temples slowly. Mild headache, she said. A tiny red light blinked on my secondary board. Rostova's resting brain wave activity outside the pod was still drawing more power than the station's peak output limit. I filed the final report to the core tribunal. I kept the cause of the crash simple. I left out the parts they would never believe. I look at the scorched drive on my desk every day. I now keep the drive as a firm reminder. Sometimes a stutter is just a god trying to speak the language of insects. They did not break the rules of our universe. They just reminded us that we only built a puddle, and they belong to the sea.